Either we heal as a team, or we're going to crumble. Inch by inch, play by play, till we're finished. We're in hell right now, gentlemen. Believe me. And we can stay here, get the shit kicked out of us, or we can fight our way back into the light. We can climb out of hell. 1 inch at a time. You know, when you get old in life, things get taken from you. I mean, that's part of life. But you only learn that when you start losing stuff. You find out life's this game of inches. So is football. Because in either game, life or football, the margin for error is so small. I mean, 1/2 a step too late or too early, and you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow, too fast, you don't quite catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us. They're in every break of the game, every minute, every second. On this team, we fight for that inch. On this team, we tear ourselves and everyone else around us to pieces for that inch. We claw our fingernails for that inch. Because we know when we add up all those inches, that's going to make the fucking difference between winning and losing. Between living and dying. I'll tell you this, in any fight, it's the guy who's willing to die who's going to win that inch. And I know if I'm going to have any life anymore, it's because I'm still willing to fight and die for that inch. Because that's what living is. There's 6 inches in front of your face. Now, I can't make you do it. You got to look at the guy next to you. Look into his eyes. Now, I think you're going to see a guy who will go that inch with you. You're going to see a guy who will sacrifice himself for this team because he knows when it comes down to it, you're going to do the same for him. That's a team, gentlemen. And either we heal now as a team, or we will die as individuals. Ideas are bulletproof.
Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. It is Sunday, October 9th, 2011. This is Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye, from federaljack.com. Today, I'm going to discuss what I witnessed yesterday, what's going on, and what I perceive to be going on. Okay? And remember, I've said this before, that perception is like 9/10 of the law. You know, it's what my drill instructor used to say to me. And it's something I've always kept in the back of my head because he's right. Even if it doesn't matter if that's what's really going on, the perception of what's going on, okay, is a very powerful thing. So, what I perceive, and this is from me keeping an eye not only from being in the middle and voicing my opinion, but also being on the outside and checking things out. I've spent about, I'd say, 10 hours now at the 2 Occupy Miami events here down in South Florida. And I am not happy with what I see. And I say that because I see people coming out who want to get involved and do stuff, and they're getting frustrated because nothing is getting done, and there's no protest event. There's no it's just meetings. It's been over 10 hours of just groups of people talking and discussing and everything else. And it's good to have your little General Assembly meetings and everything, but you don't need to spend 5 or 6 hours on having BS meetings over redundant little things. And that's what's going on right now. It's really, really sad because that's what's going on. And there's a lot of people that want to get involved. They just don't know where to go, where to look. And this Occupy event is a way for them to get out what they want to say. It's a way for them to vent their anger with the government, you know, or with the corporation or with the Federal Reserve or with whatever they want to vent their anger about. Whether maybe it's something local that's pissing them off. And this is like their way of getting out and, saying, I want to do something. And this is amazing because I've organized probably, I'd say, let's see, quick count, about 14 protests. And that's just going through the list in my head here really quick, okay? About 14 protests over the past couple years, from about 2000 and to 2006 to now. All right, and the Fed protests, going out on the streets of South Beach, giving out DVDs, DVD giveaways other places, confrontations and stuff like that, protests outside of places where other people, I've had a part in helping organize them, okay? And I can tell you that this whole thing is being co-opted. There are certain people that have risen to the top, and whether or not they seem like likable people, they don't even know themselves what kind of country we live in. They keep spouting, we live in a democracy. No, we don't live in a democracy. Okay, and I said yesterday during one of these smaller meetings with the media outlets that were there, all the media, we had the media group, and I said to them, none of us, and actually I said none of you, because I know my rights, I said none of you should be telling anybody what their rights are, and nobody else should if they don't even know what their own rights are. I said, one of the biggest problems I see is everybody keeps saying, this is democracy in action. We're a democracy. No, we're a constitutional republic. And all these little groups and organizations they're acting like a democracy, a mob rule, where 51% gets the vote and the other 49% gets screwed. Case in point, near the end of the meeting yesterday, a young lady came forward and said, some of us, there are people here that don't have access to the forums. And, how can I or anybody else that's on the forum take part and vote if we're not on the forum? How if we can't have access to it? Say maybe they don't have internet. I mean, not everybody has internet, but say they don't have internet for whatever reason they can't get on. Okay, they don't have access to the forum. So they drove not 5-10 miles, probably 20-30 miles in some cases, to come out and vote at the General Assembly meeting so their voice would be heard. And she was pushed aside because she said, I don't want to vote on the forums, and some other people that are here can't, because they don't have access, so we'd like our voice heard here. And within 5-10 minutes of her saying that, the meeting was adjourned. That's the attention span. There were, for every good idea that was thrown out by somebody randomly, somebody went up to counter that idea. Everybody was saying, everybody keeps talking about occupation, but then it's not an occupation because they say protest, and then now they've got it to where they're not even occupying. They're just going to protest. The 15th, they sent out, they emailed out flyers and stuff, and they were saying on their website that they were going to occupy on the 15th. And until yesterday, they didn't even pick a location. Now, when everybody brought up a good point about where they wanted to occupy down here, there was a lot of good people, intelligent thinking going on, and everybody kind of realized that the best spot to have it would be the government center, as they call it down here, because that's where you're close to. You have their little. I think it's either a county building or a city building that's right down the street. But you have by government center, you have right there is the Metro rail station. So you have people coming in on the train, the little tram that runs through downtown Miami, people coming in on buses, and some of these people are coming in from maybe other parts of the state, not only just maybe other parts of Miami-Dade County, maybe Broward, maybe Palm Beach, maybe south down by the Keys. You don't know. So you're going to reach more people than you would standing out, let's say, on Biscayne Boulevard by Bayside, which is where they had the original protest, okay? Because Bayside's right on the side of a street. The only place that you can park is inside Bayside, and you got to pay $10 or $20 depending on what day it is to park. So nobody's going to be inclined to pull over, and if you're giving out DVDs or flyers and trying to educate people and tell people why you're upset, okay, it's not going to work. I mean, that's technically what a protest, when you go out and do this stuff, you're trying to draw attention to something. So they couldn't even decide. Well, now, apparently right at the last minute, yesterday, they decided that now there's not even going to be an occupation. And I said, I voiced my opinion and said, well, what's the point of calling yourselves Occupy Miami if you're not even going to occupy a space, if you're going to go down to a protest for 2 or 3 hours and leave? That's hopping on the Occupy Wall Street and Occupy all these other cities bandwagon, and you're not even doing what these people are doing. These people are going out, these citizens are going out, voicing their rights, getting beaten, pepper sprayed, and everything else in some cases. And it down here, it's like the laughing stock, and there's plenty of people that want to get out and just protest and say what they got to say, hold the sign, give out a flyer, get interviewed by the alternative media, get an interview by the mainstream media, get their voice out there. And already we have to control what people say to the media because we don't want them to twist it and turn it. They're trying to control things that they don't have the power to control. It's almost like the government, and it's becoming a bureaucracy, and it's going to fall apart before it ever gets together. It's dead in the water. I'll have more on this when I come back. The problem with these protests is collectivism is being pushed. What's better for the group is better than what's better for the individual themselves, which is not true. And that's how this constitutional republic of ours is going to be destroyed at a grassroots level, because they're going to get the morons themselves to ask for a new type of government because they don't even know what type of government they have. That's like getting swindled out of a really sweet old sports car, and you don't even realize it's a sweet old sports car. Like your dad or your grandfather leaves you this cool, like, 1969 Ford Thunderbird, and it's all souped up. It's got rims and everything else, but you know nothing about cars, and you're just like, oh, it's just some old piece of crap car. What am I going to do with it? And some guy realizes that you don't know nothing about that car, and he realizes you have no idea about how sweet you have it. So he comes in, he swoops in, he buys the car off you for pennies on the dollar, and you think you've made out, and you walk away like a moron. Ha, 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 I'm happy, and you lose the sweet ride. Well, we're going to lose the sweet ride of freedom and liberty if we don't keep our eyes open and pay attention to what the hell's going on around us. Now, I'm not ragging on the people themselves that showed up, the citizens of Miami and everywhere else that showed up to the event. I'm proud of all of you that showed up. Any of you guys that are listening, I'm proud of you. Because you showed up, you're tired of the crap. And it gives me strength and spirit to know that there's people out there that are getting pissed because, over the years, the protests are slowly growing. I remember when it was 5 or 6 of us out in the street corner giving out DVDs, having some of us got drink cups hurled at us, swears and everything. And now these very same people are out there with us holding up the signs, okay? So it's good. But they realize that this thing is growing, and all of a sudden, it may get out of control. So they're going to try to co-opt it, just like they did with the Tea Party. And that's what they're doing. And it's not Obama in the White House. It goes deeper than that. People have to understand it's deeper than Wall Street. I kept repeating this yesterday because a lot of people are smart. A lot of people realize what's going on with the Federal Reserve and everything else, believe it or not. Just those voices aren't getting out. And that's the problem I see with what's going on with Occupy Miami. Now, there's a couple things that we can remedy this with, okay? Because there's a lot of people that just want to get out and do stuff. A lot of people yesterday were leaving because they were pissed off that after 6 hours of standing around and having meetings and talking about what we've done or what some of the people, the quote-unquote organizers of this event or whatever have done. Like one guy said, the past 3 hours, all I keep hearing is like a self-congratulatory, like love fest about what we've done and what we could do and everything else. And I understand where he's coming from. Now, some people were like, well, after he got pissed off and left, someone was like, well, that's kind of like, I've heard about corporate provocateurs. And I'm like, it's called agent provocateurs. You see how vocabulary? They get them to think that it's corporations sending out like some douchebag minion. They don't even bother to think that corporation is the CIA or the FBI or the local police department. They don't think. A week ago on the 1st, Occupy Miami, there was local police keeping an eye on it when everybody was out by Bayside. Yesterday, because it was raining, I guess he's the dean or whatever over at Miami-Dade Community College, let them use the Wolfson branch campus, which was like a block and a half, 2 blocks up the street. And everybody could hang out underneath. There's some outside seating areas where people can eat and stuff, and that's where everybody kind of hung out to stay out of the rain. But there was not one uniformed cop at all standing around to keep an eye on a group of what was probably at least 200 people. Now, people would say, Popeye, I thought you about freedom. Why would you need a cop to keep an eye on everything? I'm not saying that you need the cop. That just proves that if there weren't any physical uniformed cops there, that people can assemble peacefully. So that just proves that it can happen. The point is, they don't believe that that can happen, and they're afraid of large groups of people. Okay, they're trained that everybody's against them and hates them, and the citizens are Al Qaeda. Remember that. Remember, these prisons and the revoking of civil liberties are not for some Arab in a cave. It's for you, the general public. Okay, and it's being used on the general public, and it's being ramped up. And they're taught to be afraid. But there was not one uniformed cop there yesterday, and we were 150, 200 feet from the entrance to the federal courthouse. There was not one uniformed police officer at all out there. So that shows you that they were undercover inside. Because if they're not nervous enough that they have at least one patrol car sitting across the street keeping an eye on you, that means they know they don't have to worry about you because there's somebody on the inside who's already doing it. Okay? And some of these people that have gotten themselves into the position of mouthpieces or whatever are at the very least, I don't know who they are, and they seem kind of shady. One of them, I know I've seen him somewhere before, and my red flag alert keeps going up in my head, and I can't, for the past week, I can't figure out where I know him from, but I know him from somewhere. And I'm not the only person. There's a couple other people that are like, yeah, dude, the locals that are awake, and they know something. They the same thing. Their little flag, and it wasn't like we all, like I said it to them and then they brought it up. We were standing around, and he happened to walk by us, and a bunch of us at the same time all had the same thought out loud. So, and we hadn't talked about it previously. So it wasn't like we were, we're being nitpicky. It's just we're observing. I'm trying to be observant and pay attention to things. And I interviewed one of these guys, these so-called the mouthpieces or organizers, whatever you want to call them, and he last week, and he admitted when I interviewed him, when we first walked over, that him and the other dude didn't organize the event. They're just trying to help everybody get together. And it's like these two came out of nowhere, and they were very, on the first, they were very, very concerned about, making sure that it was steered in a certain direction. And even yesterday, people came up to me and said that they were a little irritated that one of these guys had appointed himself as the self-appointed spokesperson, and they were a little pissed about that. But those people's concerns were not getting aired. They were getting hushed up. And then if somebody, said something to him, by himself or whatever, well, I'm not the organizer, I'm not trying to take over or anything, but, so it's just, to me, it reeks of co-intel type operations. To me, the reason why there's no cops out there in uniform is because I know how the police operate. If there's none out in uniform watching a mass of people, it's because they've got people in plain clothes on the inside. And then we had the agent provocateurs that were there yesterday trying to get one of them said to one of the guys I was with, local cameraman, and he's a member of Federal Jack, you know who you are. I won't call him out by name because I don't want to cause him any problems, but he knows who he is. And awesome cameraman, by the way. And he was sitting, leaning against the wall, and they were like, one of these agent provocateurs guy had and he looked like a dread. He had his hair up in dreads, and he had the big Rasta knit cap on, hold his dreads in, and he's sitting there all chill. And this guy's like, man, it's time to break out the guns. Now, that goes completely against what most Rastas believe in anyway. They don't like violence and stuff like that. So that's a little odd. And he kept saying it to only certain people, and we were all like, dude, like, beat it, Like, I don't think so. One of them was like, the cameraman was like, no. Another one of our guys, Brent, you guys have seen him in the videos. He goes out with me to the street actions. They came up to him. He was wearing a camouflage shirt, and the provocateurs kept coming up to him hardcore, trying to get him to say stuff about guns or anything else. And he's like, no, we're not about violence. And he's like, dude, get away from me, agent. You know, like he would call them out. So, I mean, they were there. And we brought it up when we were in a meeting. They said, well, do you think there's agent provocateurs? And I said, they were here last week, and I guarantee you they're here right now. And they were. Got to pay attention. Open your eyes, people. We're going to break. We'll be right back.
Myself these several years were not even real. Trying to convince myself the media was making this up. That if I wait here, Morpheus will be waking me up. But instead I'm in my bed, game over. I ain't even drank nothing, but I got a hangover. First I was drunk from the lies they were feeding me. Then I sobered up and realized they were mistreating me. I stumbled out my bed and tried my best to gain some sense of it. The reasons for the cover-up, the reasons for the censorship. Now I realize that Uncle Sam...
My boy LMS. See, I support the local guys. These are the guys that have been with me here, you know, fighting with Federal Jack since, like, day one. LMS is a local rapper, you know. I don't want to call him hip-hop because I guess you could call him hip-hop, rapper/hip-hop. But he's really good. You can check him out on iTunes, just all caps LMS. And L's probably listening, or he'll hear the playback later on, and I know there's a lot of people that listen to us on High on Leah and stuff, so I want to give everybody, L's crew, a shout-out. You guys are awesome. Thanks for the music. You guys always come through. L's my boy. He's a good guy. Came out and did a live performance at the last minute for us at a 9/11 event last year. You know, a simple phone call. I called him up and said, I need you to come out, and he dropped a couple things and just came right out. So, L, thank you, brother. Anyway, I want to introduce you guys to another friend of mine, local activist / I would say organizer for Campaign for Liberty and the local Ron Paul movement around here, and all around nice guy, Hector Roos. And Hector was with me yesterday. We met up separately. He was doing a bunch of stuff yesterday, a couple different events this whole weekend actually, and he was there with me. He was at the whole meeting. He spent like 5 or 6 hours that we were there, and he got to see for himself. So one, I wanted you guys to be able to hear his thoughts about what he saw and how, you know, he agrees that it's, you know, you could see it's being co-opted and slowed down, and that's why he was trying to interject, you know, Ron Paul stuff or whatever. But I also want to, for the people that were there that are listening that feel like there's, you know, what do? Hector can tell you about the local and the Fed movement that's going on, and the local Ron Paul groups and stuff like that you can go and at least listen to what people have to say, and you can voice your opinion. You won't, you know, a place where you won't be told to shut up, basically. So, Hector, go ahead. You have the floor.
Thanks, Popeye. Here in Miami, most people don't know that we actually have a local Fed office here that's right here in Doral. Actually, right here, I'm actually also at a meeting reaching out to people who support Glenn Beck and his ideas. But right down the road from where I'm at is the Federal Reserve Building. And I will stand out there, other people will stand out there with signs and say, "And the Fed." And the Fed will be just somebody just all by themselves, somebody with a group. Doesn't matter. We're just out there to give the message. Military people know that the Fed is the problem with our country. Everything about, you know, follow the money. Everything we see that's wrong with the country, you just need to know who is in charge. You just need to look at where the money's coming from. Ron Paul says that the problem is the banks. The banks are being bought out by the Fed, and they have the disposition of being able to print money, and people will sell themselves for money these days. And, you know, if you can make the money, then you can buy people for whatever price they offer. So the point is, though, we won't be bought. Our price is too high. Is impossible to pay. Whether you believe because you can't put a price on humanity, or whether you have your faith that says the same. The fact is that this is not just a movement against banks, but it's also personal revolution in terms of human ideas and human values. That you can't define the human being in terms of dollars anymore. You can't say that I am this because I make this much money per hour. No. Now we're saying we believe in the capacity of human beings to develop our own homes, our own businesses that produce things, so that we'll be able to be defined not by how much we make or what it is we do, but what we produce. And that's something I want everybody to know, that when we go out there and we talk about these ideas of ending the Fed or pointing out the problems in society, like, with the problem with Wall Street and Occupy Wall Street, this is something that we're trying to make our voices known and say that the simple value is defined by what we say, what we do. We have a voice. We want to express ourselves. And if you don't do it, then somebody else is just going to do it for you. And that message is the one that's going to be heard, whether you like it or not. And that's the one that's going to become dominant. So all this about end the Fed, Occupy Wall Street, Occupy Miami, Occupy the world is about us establishing that we have a voice. Our ideas must be heard because we have a voice. Our voices have value. They have meaning. And Popeye's doing it right here on the radio, and you guys are hearing it because what he says has value, has truth. And we're all being empowered by it and being refreshed by it, and we're being inspired to do more and greater things. What do you think, Popeye?
People need to get up. I agree. People need to get up and they need to get involved, and that's why a lot of these people were frustrated yesterday and they were leaving because, 6 hours of sitting around voting on mundane crap that they didn't. I mean, they were voting on every little thing, and then that's when the subject, like they would get on a subject and they would stay on the subject for a half hour, 45 minutes, and that's what this co-intel stuff is. They get you to argue about little things, so the movement never gets off the ground. If you go to Occupy Miami's page right now on Facebook, like every other comment on there is somebody saying, when is there an event? When is the occupation going to take place? And now at the end of yesterday's meeting, they decided at the very last minute that it got brought up right when everybody was tired of being there for 6 hours and wanted to go home. Perfect time to get things passed, just like they passed the Federal Reserve Act, and they brought that crap into power on, Christmas. Everybody was away home with their families, and there was like 10 or 12, whatever the hell it was, or 13 of them standing around, and that's what brought it in. Same kind of, I want to go home. We'll just, everybody's at their weakest. They've been there for 6 hours. Their rear ends were tired. Their legs were tired, and it's been co-opted, and it's been co-opted from the beginning. And that's why I told you off air, I think one of those guys, at the very least one of the guys, and I told you who I think it was. I won't say it on air because I don't want to, I don't need someone trying to sue me for libel or whatever, but I think one of them is a cop. I think he's an undercover cop. And I say it because his look and everything is just over the top outrageous, and it screams undercover cop. And it's just me personally. I've been around undercover cops. I dealt with federal law enforcement. So when I was in the Coast Guard, I know what these guys look like, smell like. He reeks of cop. And that's one of the reasons I said earlier in one of my earlier segments, you didn't see any uniformed cops there yesterday, right? There was not one uniformed cop there. That means that there were cops there in plain clothes. Because have you ever seen a protest down here with no cops at all, Hector?
No way. and they're always there. They're always there. And they always make sure that you're on the sidewalk. But you have to always assume that any time that you're going to be in a public meeting, any kind of forum, you always have to assume that there's someone there working for the government. You can never not assume it. You always have to be on guard because these are the people who are going to try and steer the topic of conversation. But you know what? This is a good thing. The government is sending people to hear your message. They're paying them to hear your message. You have to understand it. This is not necessarily a bad thing. This is an opportunity if you take advantage of it. These people are being paid to listen to you speak truth. And if you take advantage of it, you can just win one more convert. And that's
exactly
important. This is our movement. This is our movement is a truth movement. Our movement.
That's why I brought down those DVDs yesterday and my flyers and stuff. Like a guy during one of the little group meetings, a guy said, "Well, where can I go to learn about this stuff? Because I have absolutely no idea about it, but I know something is wrong." And he had his daughter in his arm, and he said, "I fear for her. So where do I go to learn so I can fix things for her?" And you could tell the guy was sincere, but he had no clue. So I gave him all 5. I brought 5 different movies with me yesterday. I gave him all 5 movies, and I gave him a Federal Jack flyer, and I said, look, here's a start. So this isn't the end-all, be-all, but this is, you know, the 5 movies I gave you just barely skim the top of how deep this goes, but it gives you a great overview, and then it gives you a spot that you can go from there to go check stuff out. And that was my goal yesterday, and between last weekend and this weekend, I gave away over 750 DVDs, okay? So there's 750, different people out there. Or we'll say, we'll cut that in half because a couple of them, we'll say there's like 300 people at the very least out there that now have all these truth movies, and they can go home and watch them. And then they can say to their friends, you need to come over and see this. You know, they can have a screening, or they can copy them, because I tell everybody there's no copyright protection on the movies I give out. Okay? It doesn't exist. It took a vacation for truth. So all you got to do is take the DVDs I give you and make multiple copies of them and give them out. We're going to break. We're back in 3 minutes. When I come back, my good friend Bob Tuscan is going to join us. And he's going to chime in and give his thoughts on this subject, too. And Hector's going to stay and hang out with us, too. So we'll be right back. Stay tuned. I am writing an article, ladies and gentlemen, on Federal Jack. It's going to be titled Cluster F Miami. And it's not to make fun of the people. It's to point out the fact that it is the Occupy Miami movement, or whatever the hell you want to call it. The people being angry, they're being harnessed, and it's being turned into a bureaucratic bog of crap. And you know, case in point, again, they were supposed to have the Occupy kickoff event on the 15th in solidarity, I guess, with a couple other Occupy groups. And by yesterday afternoon, by the time everything was done and the end of the meeting, they had pretty much gotten everybody, it was only done because of a Spanish group and this and that. And the guy, one of the guys that brought this up and mentioned some stuff happened to be somebody that was hanging out with one of the only local skinhead that showed up. And it turns out this guy, one of our guys did a little bit of research on him, and it turns out this guy's not even a skinhead. He's like a faux skinhead, and he's like a communist, Leninist, Marxist, but he was dressed like a skinhead with Doc Martens and the red laces. But he's a Cuban guy. And he was talking to this other guy, and the other guy, I tried a couple times to give him some DVDs and a couple of Federal Jack flyers, and he was like, no, I'm good. I don't believe in conspiracies and stuff like that. And I kept hearing him talking to this. I kept trying to hover around him and listen to their conversations, and I would act like I was videotaping and stuff. And I would get close enough to hear what they were talking about. And he kept saying, some of these people, those whack-out zeitgeist movie-type people, believe in conspiracies. So, and he would be talking to other people about it. So, again, that guy is suspect in my eyes, okay? How could you know something is wrong and yet not realize that a conspiracy, okay, the definition of a conspiracy is 2 or more people getting together to do something bad. So, by definition, any of these local politicians getting together and coming up with an idea to screw their constituents, that's a conspiracy. If the Fed gets together and decides that they're going to print money and destroy the economy, that's a conspiracy. And technically, 200 people getting together, to voice their opinion, what do the cops usually charge protesters with? Conspiracy to commit riot. Duh. Why? Because there's more than 2 people standing around. Duh. So people need to wake up. Now, if somebody vehemently denies things like that, to me, you scream, agent. And he was one of the only people at the meeting. See, I was being observant. He was the person that brought up the fact that maybe we shouldn't have it on the 15th, and maybe we should push it back to a further date because we're just not organized enough yet. Do you see how a movement can get co-opted so quickly? It's very, very fast. People have good intentions, but you're right. We don't want to have the same problems we had with the police. We need to get the proper permits. And then somebody got up yesterday and brought up a good point. The city's not going to give you a permit, And I even said, look, why are you going to permit out to the city? Now you're contracting out to the city. They can come in whenever they want and shut you the hell down. You know what your permit is? The First Amendment. That's your damn permit. Okay? All the people that died to bring about the country that was founded after the Revolutionary War, didn't do so you'd have to go get a goddamn permit to stand out in a corner and air your grievances with the government. They died so you could stand on that corner with a bullhorn and say, this is crap. There's your friggin' permit. And that's the kind of thinking, you see, all you need is one little person that knows how to handle things, and you get a couple of them that are working in unison. And one of the other guys I was with noticed that there was a couple of them that we were keeping our eye on, and they were all communicating with each other with signals. They're twirling their hair. Because there was a female involved. She would twirl her finger in her hair. The other one, they would scratch their noses and their ears. Signals to each other. We would watch them pay attention when certain people would speak. We would have one guy paying attention to them to see what their reactions were. They would roll their eyes, or they would scratch their nose and keep an eye on this guy or whatever. Little things like that. Those are the things that stood out. Anyway, Bob Tuskin's joining us, as well as Hector's hanging out with us. Bob, when you were at Occupy Gainesville the other day, did you notice any of this same sort of behavior where there was not even agent provocateurs, because those are the people like that I consider to be like black bloc type morons, or the let's burn stuff. These guys are the type of people that actually can get in and co-opt and steer a movement. Did you see anybody like that in Gainesville?
Gainesville's a small town, Popeye, and I got 2 words: useful idiots. Unfortunately, I don't think it's always as sophisticated as we may make it out to be. Now, in a bigger place like Miami, I have no doubt that there's more of a concerted effort to introduce COINTELPRO and agent provocateurs. But here in Gainesville, I kind of just saw the same old moochers from the socialist and union parties and various hippie groups here around town show up. And there were a lot of good people. Like I said, it's a small town here, so I kind of know who's who. As you could imagine, it's a little bit easier to keep track than Miami. But the bottom line is, even if they're going to co-opt it, Popeye, we need to be taking as much of the limelight as possible, because it's important that we don't allow them to just simply co-opt it, and that we do everything we can to speak up and represent true ideas that are going to affect the world we live in and address the root of the problem, and not just more of these symptoms taking us to more of a socialist-based draconian state.
I agree. And people that, there are people that don't show up because they're like, well, these people are socialists. No. The Ron Paulers, the 9/11 truthers, the End the Fetters. Look, we all know, first of all, most of the Ron Paul groups now are awake to 9/11 truth. 2008, they would call us the crazy truthers. By now, though, they've come to realize what the deal is. We've woken a lot of them up.
Many of them
like,
have. Wow. Some of them are still not up.
Some of them are still not up. You're
correct. Check this out, Popeye. Recently, they did a poll of the Occupy movement, and 75% voted for a new investigation.
Well, there you go. So many of them are awake, but those aren't the people that the mainstream media, interviews, and then they try to put this leftist spin on it because it's divide and conquer. They don't want the people, the Tea Partiers, realizing that they have everything in common with the same people that are pissed off about Occupy Wall Street. They don't want that. So they try to get it so that, oh my God, if you're for Occupy Wall Street, you're a quote-unquote socialist. And there you go. Divide and conquer. You've now labeled a group, and once you label that group, you attack that group. Kind of like what Hitler did with the Jews, or his political opponents, or communists, or trade unionists. Very similar tactics. But no, it's all coincidental, right? No, it's not coincidental. This stuff, they know how to do this stuff. That's why I said, I think at least one of those guys is an undercover Miami police officer, either for the city or for, somehow for Dade County, but probably for the city, because the city's got money like that. Who knows?
Yeah, I have no doubt, Popeye. It's important that people occupy their local Occupy movements, though. Again, there's all sorts of spin-offs that have come from this. Occupy the Fed. There's
bring out
Peter
truth
Schiff.
DVDs. Bring out
Peter
flyers. Talk about Bob's show.
Yeah, exactly, or Federal Jack. Peter Schiff's now in New York talking about Occupy the Constitution. There's Occupy Yourself, which was an article we released on my website this past week, which everyone should check out. And then the last thing that I've come up with is Occupy. meaning take the voice and the ability to protest and use it for good. Popeye, as I've told you off the air, recently I did an interview with my local neocon station. And they didn't pick me because I'm someone special or anything like that. They picked me because they were looking for somebody to talk about the Occupy movement, as somebody who was, I'm doing air quotes, involved. And although I'm just kind of loosely involved and an independent journalist, I thought it was a great opportunity to come on and talk about it. And you heard the interview, Popeye. It went really well. It created this, this amazing response, and it showed me that on a grassroots level, we don't have to have these movements occupied, that we can only control what our community does. And the national level and the national co-opted version of this, we can't associate ourselves with. That's why we have to stress that people just need to protest in general and be upset, whether it's the influence from this Occupy Wall Street stuff or not. It's time we stand up.
Well, people need to stand up and get out there. People need to go out there and educate them. I've said this 100,000 times. That's why I gave out DVDs yesterday and said to people, you need to know who the enemy is first, because there's so many people running around, Wall Street's the bad guys, it's just big corporations. We need to give free, we need to give illegal aliens free, give them, what do they call, amnesty. No, that's, and some people are pissed. They're trying to drag local things that are pissing off people into it, which is good. But all these people have all these voices. Why not just let them go out in the street? And then once you take to the street and you actually occupy, then you organize. There's already some form of organization to it already. Right now, it's meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, and people are getting pissed and leaving. Now you're going to alienate people. Now they're going to go, Occupy Miami sucks. I already heard it yesterday. And let me tell you something. If you're going to co-opt an organization and bring it down to its knees, that's the kind of thing that happens. So I don't know what's going on. We got another hour, guys, so stay tuned. Bob Tuskin, Hector Roos is hanging out, and myself, Popeye. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the second hour of Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye, from FederalJack.com. I'm hanging out today with my buddy Bob Tuskin and my other friend Hector Roos. Hector, you're at a 9/12 meeting, and you guys are over there interjecting truth. And you said that there's actually a lot of people there that are showing up and doing the same thing, that they know what's going on and they're awake. And that you've been trying to see what the general opinion about some of the, not all of the Occupy events. And again, I'm not bashing, by the way, before I let Hector pontificate, I'm not bashing any Occupy event people that show up because, the angry, pissed off people that show up because they want to vent their opinion. I'm not bashing anybody, by the way. I'm just saying, I'm just telling you what I see from my viewpoint and my experience, that there are certain events, certain Occupy things. Some of them are completely awake, but some of them are, they have the potential to be very powerful, and I think that's being hijacked. And I don't want that. I want the people that are coming out to these events to have a chance to voice their opinion. In fact, I know there's a lot of people listening. If on my Wednesday show on Wednesday the 12th, if you guys want, I will do a call-in show for people that didn't get a chance to voice their opinion or feel that they kind of got squished, by this mob rule mentality yesterday. I'll give you guys, 2 hours to voice your opinion. So if you want Wednesday, I will take calls, but only from the residents of Miami, that came out to the Occupy Miami event, or residents of Miami that want to, voice their opinion, or of the surrounding area. I'll say South Florida. I want to give you guys a voice that maybe you didn't get at the meeting. I want you guys to be able to to say something, because I know maybe some of the organizers or maybe somebody in the media group or somebody will be listening, and that way maybe you guys can get your voice out, because some of you said you didn't have access to the forums yesterday. So I like to help people get their voice out and everything else. And in fact, even if I have a little time today, I might take calls. But definitely Wednesday, the 12th, I will give you guys 2 hours to voice your opinions about what you want to say. So if you want to think about it before you call in, and get something a little prepared, so you sound you get your point across and nobody can make fun of you or badmouth you, that's fine. I'll give you a couple days. Anyway, Hector, what is the general opinion, I guess, of the people? First, I guess, of the awake people, and then of the whole general opinion of the Occupy Miami thing that's going, or not. Let me rephrase that: not Occupy Miami, Occupy Wall Street, and the origins of it, not the massive monster that it's become all over the United States. That's why they're freaking out, because I don't think they can control it. I mean the original event. And remember, Al Gore was calling for an American autumn, if you remember, about 2 months ago. Right before this stuff all started. But what do you guys think down there, at least, what the opinion, the general opinion is of the people when it comes to the whole start of this? You there, Hector? Did I lose you? Let me see if he got cut off, guys. He might have gotten cut off. Yeah, Hector got cut off. We lost him. I'll try to get him back in again during the break. Bob, what do you think? You've been a protester and an activist just as long as you've been a radio show host, and I mean you've dealt with a lot of this yourself. What do you think about this? What's your general opinion? Do you think that it was started as a way to control maybe opposition, and that it's just getting out of control for these people? They can't. There's no way they can control it because the people really are pissed. What, did I lose both of them? Somebody must not like me today. Well, I'll tell you what my opinion of it is. I think it is being hijacked. I think that I think that it is being completely a good movement, a good organization, good people. Some of it is being hijacked. Some of the message, and by that I mean the mainstream media coming out and saying they're all socialists. They're not all socialists. That's a lie. There are some of the socialist lefties there, but that doesn't encompass the entire group of people, especially down here. I'll go back to the people that show up at Occupy Miami. I could guarantee you probably 90% of them were not socialists. The ones that were maybe vocal did say some socialist stuff, but most of those people don't want communism or socialism. A lot of residents of Miami come from Latin America. They grew up under a horrible communist dictatorship or, some sort of socialist government. And they came here to get the hell away from that. So that, because they knew that the individual cannot flourish under those type of conditions. Individuality is squished. And when I come back, actually, on the second segment, I'm going to, because there's not enough time to play the whole clip, I'm going to play you a clip from G. Edward Griffin that explains in a nutshell, collectivism versus individualism. For the listeners that don't know what collectivism is and don't understand what I'm talking about, the reason you can see that some of these Occupy movements get hijacked is because you'll see that it has to be everybody saying, well, it's democratic and democracy. No, democracy, again, is mob rule. It's 51% get their way and the other 49% get screwed.
But Popeye, this is what democracy looks like.
Oh, dude, I hate that chant.
This is what democracy looks like.
I hate that chant, Bob. I absolutely cannot stand that chant.
You and me both. Is that I just hear the screeching voice of a 20-year-old chick saying, "This is what every time. It just makes me nauseous."
Mm-hmm. And you see them beating on the bongo drums, and that's not. Well, she's right. That is what democracy looks like. A democracy is a mob of people where 51% are ruling the other 49%, and that's what you see. If it was a constitutional republic, things would be a little. If they walked around going, "This is a constitutional republic," but that doesn't have the. I guess that doesn't have the ring to the same thing to it, so it doesn't sound so neat and fancy. And it's not easy for the masses to remember.
United will never be divided. The people. All of these chants, by the way, introduced by the CIA.
Yep, and it's collectivism. They want you to think as a collective whole. They don't want you to realize that the only way that a collective community can survive is by each individual. And G. Edward Griffin will explain that. You'll hear the clip I'm going to play from him. He explains exactly that. It's, to put it like the explanation he uses, when you look at a forest really doesn't exist. A forest is made up of individual trees. That's where the term "you can't see the forest through the trees" comes from, because the forest really doesn't exist, okay? It's each individual tree. Every tree makes up that forest. So if you cut down one tree, you've just affected it. If you cut down 2 trees, 3 trees, you've just affected it. Same thing with people. If you look at groups, this is all play on words and dictionary terms. This is why people have to learn. I'm telling you, you have to get, for the local listeners, Occupy Miami guys, go out and get a copy of Black's Law Dictionary. If you want to make sure that you guys are protected with your rights, that way the cops can't screw with you and stuff. I mean, they might try, but at least if you have to go to court, you guys will have this on your side. All you need to know there is in that book. Get a copy of Black's Law Dictionary. If there's anybody in the pamphleting committee or whatever the hell you guys call it, make a pamphlet and tell people to go look up Black's Law Dictionary, because that'll explain it. You have to understand the system in order to be able to play in it. There's no way. So again, do not go get permits from the city. First of all, the lady that spoke on the microphone yesterday and said that they probably wouldn't give you permits, she's, I guarantee you, 99.9% correct. Okay, if not 100%. The city's probably going to tell you to screw. See, they get you to think that you have to contract with them, and then they just don't give you the permit for it. Same thing the government did with cannabis back in the day, before they, in the 70s, when they labeled it a narcotic like heroin. It used to be a tax stamp. It used to be, and if you want to grow, you have to have a tax stamp. And then they just didn't issue anybody the tax stamp. So there goes your freedom. They legislate your freedom away. I'm telling you, the First Amendment is your permit. Everybody has the right to air a grievance. Now, the location is tricky, and it's good that people were smart in the process of they had to decide about the location and stuff. That is good, and it is good to have a General Assembly meeting, but having it dragged out for 2 6-hour sessions, to me, and then now the occupation has been pushed back even further, to me, that shows that somebody's steering it that shouldn't be steering it. So I'm just concerned, because I want everybody down here to get their voices out. There's a lot of good people here that have something good and intelligent to say, and they all have the right to say it. We're going to break. We'll be right back, guys. We are back, guys, and as promised, I'm going to play that clip now for you. It's G. Edward Griffin, and he's talking about the difference between collectivism and individualism. And he states it a lot clearer and more eloquently than I could. So rather than waste your time with me trying to explain it to you, I'd rather you hear it right from the horse's mouth. So here's the interview clip with him.
There's a word much worse than communism, socialism, fascism. The word is collectivism. You're going to learn about that word and how it disrupts a lot of things and how it's in control all over the place. Our guest is Edward Griffin, and Ed's website is freedomforceinternational.org, and Ed is a regular contributor here at Free Market News. Ed, very good to have you on again.
Thank you very much, John.
Collectivism.
Yeah, this is kind of a dictionary game, isn't it? Because that word collectivism, although it's certainly in the dictionary, and it was used quite a bit in historical documents, current history documents of a century ago, it's almost vacant from the modern vocabulary. Collectivism, as you just said in your introduction, is the underlying general ideology that is common to so many of the totalitarian systems of modern times. Communism, fascism, Nazism, all three of those have as their underpinning certain common elements to an ideology that really, they're the only things that you should be looking at. The names communism, fascism, Nazism, so are just labels, but they don't describe anything. Collectivism is what we're talking about. So what is collectivism? We don't have time for all of it, but we've been able to identify certain common components. One of them is the idea that the group is more important than the individual, and that the individual, if necessary, must be sacrificed for the greater good of the greater number. Now, as I've said many times, that is something that I learned in school, and I thought it made a lot of sense at that time, because I was told that we were living in a democracy, and in a democracy, isn't it true that 51% of the vote should rule? And that all made sense to me at the time. But forgive me if I repeat myself here for your listeners that may have heard this before, but for those who have just tuned in, this is an important piece of information. A democracy, a pure democracy, is not a good idea. As our founding fathers clearly stated, when they created this country, they discussed the merits and demerits of a democracy, and to a man, they said, we do not want a democracy for this country. We want a republic. And they were very emphatic on that. Now, that's strange to the modern reader, because don't we have a democracy?
Yes, we have
Isn't a democracy a good thing?
Good
you know,
thing.
Yeah. Well, let's just analyze for a minute. A democracy is, pure democracy is based on the concept of majority rule. And that's the end of it. And you say, well, what's wrong with that? Well, there could be plenty wrong with that. And the best example I can think of is a lynch mob. Now, majority rule there. There's only one dissenting vote, and he's at the end of the rope.
Yes.
Well, a thinker would say, well, wait a minute, we better go back over this. So you come quickly to the decision that the majority should rule, okay, but within certain limitations, not to the extent of denying the rights of the individual or a minority. That should be something that even the majority should not be allowed to do. Because we know from history, and our founding fathers knew from history, that a mob can be a very vicious thing. And it's possible for a demagogue to whip up the passions of a mob and actually sway the majority in moments that would be very destructive of the rights of individuals or minorities. And that's why they wrote the Constitution, which, when you analyze it in general, was a series of limitations on what the majority can do.
Now, if we had a pure democracy, then a mob vote could take place and say, well, people over the age of 72 are a burden. Let us legally put them to sleep, because it would be better for the economy as a whole. And we could vote this type of thing in.
Absolutely. And all they have to do is claim that their action is for the greater good of the greater number. You see? Now, that's one of the foundations of collectivism. Now, the individualist, on the other hand, and that's the other side of the debate, individualists versus collectivists. The individualist looks at society and says, wait a minute, what is this thing called group? Where's a group? Can you point to a group? Can you see a group? You can't. You can only see individuals. The word group is an abstraction. It's a word concept. It's an image in the mind of something that doesn't really exist, except to the extent that individuals exist. It's like the word forest. There's no such thing as a forest. There are only trees. You can see trees, but you cannot see forests. So it's an abstraction. When you then, therefore, base a political philosophy on an abstraction, and you say that this abstraction has rights that are greater than the individual, you've made a huge mistake, because what you're doing is you're sacrificing this so-called group anyway, but you're doing it one person at a time. And the irony of it is that the leaders of this so-called democracy, or this concept of collectivism, of the superiority of the group, the leaders are making the decisions of what is best for the greater number. They're the ones who are saying that we're going to have to get rid of everybody over 70, or everybody over 60, or everybody we don't like, because we don't like the way they think. Maybe they've got hate crimes or something, or maybe they don't vote Republican, or they don't vote Democrat. We don't like them for some reason, and it's for the greater good of society. We're just going to have to put them in jail or possibly eliminate them. So that's one of the tenets of collectivism, and the individualist says, no, you can't do that. The rights of the individual and the minority must be preserved. Well, there are other things we could talk about.
There's just a prime, perfect example from G. Edward Griffin. Now, if you guys don't know who he is, you check out just Google him, and his website will come up.
And Popeye, by the way, he's going to be coming on your show in the near future, and you're going to want to check that out, folks. I can't wait to hear Popeye interview the good old G. Edward Griffin.
Oh, he's one of my heroes, dude. I have to tell you, he's one of the only people that's been at this for like 50 years.
Well, that's because he's almost 95.
You know, he interviewed. He's the guy that brought to light that Russian dude, the one that talked about how they're literally twisting people's minds so that they think like the Soviet. They are the Soviet, and he explained it's called How They Brainwash a Nation. I'll find the link because the break's coming up in about a minute, but during the break I'll find the link, and G. Edward Griffin is interviewing this guy, and he explains to him what they're doing and how. And he said, this is back in like the 80s. And, he's like, within the next like 20, 25 years, that, the country's going to be completely different and think completely different. And look at how they bring up your children. Freak out and cry. The lady who had to take her kids out of school, and she homeschooled her kids, and the straw that broke the camel's back was when they were driving past a construction site, and the kid freaked out and started pounding on the window and said, "They're killing the earth. Make them stop. Make them stop." I mean, that's insane. Look what they're doing to your children. They're turning your own children against you. They're giving them ticket books. It's insane. They're saying if mommy and daddy smoke pot, call up the DARE program, and the DARE program will give you an Xbox 360. And by the way, it's the DARE program that introduced drugs to the schools and to these kids. Charlotte Iserby talks about this. Anytime you hear anything with the word education hung off the end of it, it's bad. I played some of her clips in a show I did last week, but go check out Charlotte Iserby on YouTube and listen to what she has to say. We're going to break. We'll be right back.
Touch the sands of a southern Florida beach. Have you seen a grown man cry, or a child that's slowly dying? Have you looked inside to see all that you can see?
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye, from federaljack.com. I want to give a big shout out to all the new listeners. Thanks for tuning in, guys and gals, if there's ladies in the audience listening too. I'm sure there are. Again, I'm not bashing. I don't want anybody to feel that I'm trying to bash them or marginalize them or anything. I'm trying to show you that your voices are going to be silenced because of, under the guise of quote-unquote democracy, and that's not what this country is founded upon. And I said this yesterday. The people that are listening that saw me, heard me talk about this yesterday, they'll remember me saying it. Nobody should be educating anyone else about their rights if they don't even know their own. And it's as simple as that. If you don't know the full story, you shouldn't be out pontificating and giving people a lecture on things. I agree in freedom of speech, but from an educated, logical viewpoint, you shouldn't be teaching somebody something that you don't know about yourself. Think about it. Would you want, if, let's say, you have children, do you want the teacher who doesn't know math teaching your child math? No. Do you want to learn how to change a tire from someone that doesn't know how to do it? No. If you're getting your car worked on, would you let the guy that knows what he's doing work on your car, or would you let the guy that's not really sure what he's doing fix your brakes? Use some logical thinking. It's very important. That's actually being bred out of people. It's upsetting, it's sad, but that's being bred out of individuals. Through school, through the mass media, you're being taught not to think for yourself. You're being taught that you need groupthink. Again, case in point, at some of these events, these different Occupy events, you'll see groups, where everybody has to get in little groups and have everybody has to think alike or have, that train of thought. Nobody can sit and think for themselves. And it's not that the individuals that are in the groups can't think. It's just that that idea is put across, and then people literally, they project it themselves. They'll form up into groups to form an opinion. Okay, and I'm not saying that every group and every meeting is bad. That would be an idiotic thing to say. But to have the need to get in and vote on every little thing. I speak from personal experience. Back in the day with Federal Jack, we used to have more people involved behind the scenes. And it got to a point where I'm the webmaster. I run the website. Now we had split it. It was Federal Jack, the activist end of it, where we went out and gave out DVDs and did street actions, and then there was the website itself. Now I'm the webmaster, so I'm the one that has final say on everything on the site. I have a couple IT guys that help me out, but I'm the one that runs the site. Now, we had a point where they wanted to vote on things, and I agreed there should be certain things that are voted on. But it got to the point where we had people that were like, well, we should vote on every little thing under the sun. And we couldn't get anything done because there was we would have a meeting, like a Skype meeting, and there'd be 5 or 6 of us, and we'd be fighting and arguing because we were voting on every little thing, and then every little nitpicky thing got scrutinized and looked. We couldn't, it was almost like you had to have it was just, I don't want to say that they came in and they were doing it on purpose. That wasn't it. It was just everybody wanted to have a say, and I understand that, but there were certain things you don't need to vote on. And by focusing on every little minuscule thing, you spend a lot of time. And what happens is you get people like yesterday, case in point, at the local event here, they got mad and left. Now, I don't want those people to get disheartened and then not want to come out and say what they have to say, because maybe the person that left or the woman that left, and it wasn't just 1 or 2 people, it was a bunch of people, but I'm just saying maybe any man or woman that left, maybe they had something really good and important to say. Maybe they did have something important to say. Agent provocatoris attitude isn't somebody getting pissed and walking off. No, the agent provocateur people were the ones that were secretly saying to a few of us, hey, we should go get guns and stuff like that, making stupid ass comments, or we should go light stuff on fire. And I'm not kidding. There were people that said this to a couple of us. And we knew. We had a little meeting afterwards. There was about 1, 2, 3, 4. There was 4 of us that met up afterwards. And we had a meeting, and all of us were separate. We were all separated. Some of us met up at 1 or 2 points during the 5 or 6 hours, but pretty much we were all walking around keeping our eyes on different stuff. And we all had kind of the same general opinion about the same general people. So it's easy for something to get hijacked with well-intentioned people, and it's one of the ways to hijack it is to destroy a movement is to not even let it get any momentum. And that's what they've succeeded with this one, because now they keep putting it off and putting it off. And I understand they're maybe well-intentioned, but you're disenfranchising the people that are going to come out, and you're going to end up hurting yourself more than you're going to help yourself. There should be an occupation date set, go, and then there's going to be bugs. Nothing is going to be perfect. I understand a lot of it has to do with people that are worried about trying to make sure they're trying to learn from what other events have happened at other events, and they're trying to take caution. But that's thinking like the government. You can't stop against everything. Okay, you have to know your rights. You have to know certain things, and that is it. If you worry about every minuscule little thing, you're going to end up. It's going to become so bureaucratic that nobody's going to want to get involved, because you're going to piss people off, and eventually it'll fall apart under its own weight. And I don't want to see that, because there's a lot of good intentioned people coming out, and everybody has a right to say what they have to say, whether it be local stuff or, bigger stuff. But a lot of the local stuff, to understand why the local stuff happens the way it does, a lot of people have to, you need to understand. There is a need. You have no choice. You have to understand at a national level what's going on. And you have to understand things like Agenda 21. You have to understand things like that in order to be able to focus and understand on why the local level does things. Because they're doing things because there are certain things that they have to adhere to. They're not telling you that, but they're just doing what they have to do, what they think they need to do. Okay? And again, a lot of that comes from local politicians that aren't educated about their rights, and they don't even know what kind of government we have. They don't understand the founding of this country and stuff like that. There's people that really, you get people from other countries that are politicians. And again, I'm not picking on any immigrants. My mother, fresh off the boat immigrant, okay, from Holland, right at the end of World War II. Well, about 10 years after World War II, they came over here. And I understand about immigrants and stuff. I get it, okay? But if you're going to come to a country, don't try to interject the politics that you were exposed to in your country into our country, okay? And that's, again, that happens a lot too. And people like that, they're not trying to be evil. A lot of times, they're being led around by the nose. As Governor Jesse Ventura has said on multiple occasions, that when he was the governor, right after he was, he took office, he was met with a bunch of people from the CIA, and they looked like they worked inside of, some of them, he didn't know, he had never seen, but some of them were people that worked in the office that, for him. And they may be a secretary or whatever else, but in reality, they're a CIA agent. This kind of stuff does happen. That's how the intelligence agencies keep an eye on things. And for the people that say, oh, well, or, big corporations, just so you know, the CIA is a private corporation. It's not a government agency. It's a private corporation that supposedly does work on behalf of the United States government. But they are, for all intents and purposes, as much of a federal agency as the Federal Reserve or Blackwater. Okay? They are not a federal agency. They are a private corporation. They masquerade as a federal agency, and they run around with federal powers, but they're not a government agency. It's a private corporation. So there you go. If you hate corporations, you should hate the CIA, because they're one of the largest evil corporations there are. Okay? And getting back to what I was talking about, what they'll do is they'll put somebody in who can control the mayor or the governor or whatever and steer him. The best book you could read about this is a book called The Secret Team by Colonel L. Fletcher Prouty. He died in 2000, but you can still get the book, The Secret Team. And I'll put it in the chat just in case there's anybody that is listening and that's in the chat and they need me to throw it in there. It's The Secret Team. Okay? Check it out. You'll understand how the CIA operates and how they control everything right down to your local town government. Again, you have to understand the enemy in order to defeat them. You have to understand how they work. It's the only way we're going to defeat this and we're going to get back our freedom. We'll be right back. Check out Mobilize Miami on Facebook. Another group springing up trying to, get their voices heard. Check them out. Mobilize Miami. We are back, guys. It is the last and final segment of my Sunday show. I'm going to play for the new listeners, for the people, the people that are involved locally, like Occupy Miami and stuff. I'm going to play a speech for you guys that most of my regular listeners have heard multiple times before, and it usually gives everybody goosebumps every time I play it. But it's a speech by John F. Kennedy, because a lot of you yesterday were talking. I heard some people saying, they bring up Kennedy and, back then, blah, blah, blah. Well, some of you, and maybe your guys aren't listening because you think I'm conspiracy oriented. Again, I've been, you get labeled whatever, and it says conspiracy or no longer theory on my card. So, but some people, I don't want to believe that there's a big thing going on, and of course you have the speech you're going to hear. People have always said, oh well, it was he was talking about communism, but no, he wasn't. He says right in the speech, secret societies. But I digress. Anyway. It's about, we do need to come together, people with logical thinking. Everybody needs to have a voice. Okay? If you're out there and you're not sure about getting involved, get up, try to contact the organizers of Occupy Miami and help them out so that their efforts don't get, they're not in vain, and that the whole group, all those people, that energy isn't shifted in the wrong direction. Let's make sure that gets shifted in the right direction. If you don't want to do that, there's another group that popped up, Mobilize Miami. You can get with them. Or just go out in the street corner and give out DVDs yourself and, with a sign. But whatever you do, make sure you videotape it and put it on YouTube, because that will inspire other people that might see it, and they'll come out. Believe me, it really works. As an activist tool, that kind of stuff works. So go out and do something. Hold the sign up. If you guys are former police officers and you see, are military and you're retired and you see something that's going on, go out and talk. You guys heard my Friday show with Gerald President. He's a law enforcement officer, and he educates the guys that are around him. And he said sometimes they look at him like he's got 6 heads, and sometimes they're receptive to what he's got to say. But you got to take the chance. You got to do it. You love this country. You love your children. You love freedom. Then you need to stand up and fight for it, because that's the one thing we all have in common is freedom. Because without freedom, you can't have anything else. You can't assemble. You can't have what you guys had yesterday. Or any of these other organizations all over the country are having. Without freedom, you can't have that. You can't worship whatever, religion you want to worship. You can't wear what you want to wear or say what you want to say. Bill Cooper said it best. The one thing we all have in common is freedom. And it's time we all learn and realize that. Now, for the newcomers, I'm going to play the speech for you guys, and this will probably give you goosebumps. But pay attention to what John F. Kennedy was saying back in 1961. He was trying to warn us.
President John F. Kennedy.
Ladies and gentlemen, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program. For from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I am not asking your newspapers to support an administration, but I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people. For I have complete confidence in the response and dedication of our citizens whenever they are fully informed. I not only could not stifle controversy among your readers, I welcome it. This administration intends to be candid about its errors, For as a wise man once said, an error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. We intend to accept full responsibility for our errors, and we expect you to point them out when we miss them. Without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy. And that is why our press was protected by the First Amendment, the only business in America specifically protected by the Constitution, not primarily to amuse and entertain, not to emphasize the trivial and the sentimental, not to simply give the public what it wants, but to inform, to arouse, to reflect, to state our dangers and our opportunities, to indicate our crises and our choices, to lead, mold, educate, and sometimes even anger public opinion. This means greater coverage and analysis of international news, for it is no longer far away and foreign, but close at hand and local. It means greater attention to improved understanding of the news, as well as improved transmission. And it means, finally, that government at all levels must meet its obligation to provide you with the fullest possible information outside the narrowest limits of national security. And so it is to the printing press, to the recorder of man's deeds, the keeper of his conscience, the courier of his news, that we look for strength and assistance, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
There you have it. And you wonder why they blew his brains out. And it wasn't just that. There was a multitude of things. He was shutting down the CIA. He was printing real money that was backed by silver. A lot of stuff you're not taught. You're just told that Lee Harvey Oswald was a lone nut gunman and shot him with a magic bullet. But I believe, at least for my listeners, that I've been able to present more than enough evidence on the behalf of the fact that that is full of crap. But that's another story in itself. If you want more information for the new listeners, go to my website, federaljack.com. It's updated daily. There's tons and tons of articles on there. Archives go back all the way to 2007. There's a truth movie section with a couple hundred movie links you can check out, and it's still under construction on the bottom, adding more links and stuff and organizing it, but pretty much most of it's organized into 9/11, JFK, New World Order, Illuminati, stuff like that, economics. Again, Wednesday, I'll be opening up the phone lines only to local Miami residents, activists, anybody that didn't get a chance to get their voice out at any of the Occupy Miami meetings. If you can't get on the forum, some people said they couldn't get on the forums to vote. If you can't, and you can hear the broadcast, I'll even give you the phone number. It's 888-320-6151, 888-320-6151. That way you guys can call in on Wednesday, and you can. I want you guys to be able to voice your opinion. And if email me beforehand at info@federaljack.com, info@federaljack.com. That way I can, if there's a bunch of you, I can get you guys on, give you guys, a couple minutes or 10 minutes or whatever for each of you to talk if you need a segment or whatever, depending. So if you want to come on Wednesday, email me, info@federaljack.com, and we'll get you on and get your voice heard. Again, I want it for people that didn't get a chance to speak or didn't get a chance to have a say at the meetings, at either of the two Occupy Miami meetings, or if you're a local Miami activist. I'll catch you guys on Wednesday, and stay tuned for my buddy Joe Joseph. He's up next with Gwen Caldwell.